But I looked up, I was 24 years old, 25, I was broke, I was a convicted felon, I was making $10 an hour at some BS job, and it kind of just hit me. It's like, dude, like if you don't do something fast, you're just gonna end up living a horrible life. You can reinvent your life at any single point in time. And if you do that, once you win, then the regret of the past goes away. The biggest mistake and the next frontier a lot of creators need to get a hold of is getting a handle on marketing and sales. And a reason why a lot of creators shy away from marketing and sales is because you have to go through a lot of rejection.
Greetings all, welcome back to Living Once Twice, the place where we rewrite narratives, reinvent ourselves, and reimagine our lives. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. Before we dive in, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also giving us a follow on Instagram at Living Once Twice, where you can view more great content and learn about all of our amazing guests, including the guest that I'm going to bring on today, the one and only Ayodeji Awosika, aka Ayo. Ayo is a 3-time best-selling author, one of the top writers on Medium with over 106,000 followers, Tedx speaker and writing coach. As a coach, Ayo provides his students and audience with both the critical skills and honest truth regarding everything from content creation, generating income as a creator, killing procrastination, self-improvement, and so much more. Ayo, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to be on here. Glad to see you persistent and doing so well with your podcast, man. Life is good. I have no complaints.
That's what I like to hear. And that kind of is a good segue into just how I learned about your work. Giving the folks some background context, I discovered your YouTube channel back in 2021. Then I had the opportunity to take your Breakthrough Momentum course, and we'll talk about some of those learnings from that time. And then from there, I've just continued to reach out to you and stay in touch. And I was so excited when you agreed to join for an interview on the podcast because, folks, one of the things I appreciate, Ayo, is you cut straight to it. Your BS meter from a scale of 1 to 10 is on a 20. So you get to the heart of it. It's direct, it's honest. But if people will put their feelings on the sidelines, they could really level up in a lot of the different areas that we're going to talk about. So just going into this, I'm just grateful for your time, and I know all the gems that you're going to share with the audience today.
Glad to be here, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. So where I want to go is, we're going to talk about content creation. We're going to talk about some of the different tools and tips you can offer. But I want to go through your background and your journey, especially for folks who might not be familiar with your work. And specifically the article in which the topic was How I Killed My Former Self, the one I couldn't stand to see in the mirror, and how you can too. So Ayo, for those not familiar with your story, can you take us back and share with us, what was the turning point for you and what made you decide to start taking responsibility for your life and rewriting your own script?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So, I grew up in a regular middle class family, good parents, good upbringing. Ended up going to college, but then it was around that time, kind of late high school and college, I decided to get myself into things that just weren't very good for me, right? So I got extremely heavy into partying, drinking, pretty much every day from when I started college, probably to the age of 25. I was either drinking or smoking weed or doing drugs, pretty much every single day. I got put on academic probation multiple times in college. I ended up dropping out of college, and I even got arrested for selling weed. So I kind of had things set up for me to go live a good life, but I basically took every opportunity possible to mess things up. So I was still living in the college town where I had dropped out. All of my friends had left, they had graduated, they had their nice jobs, and I was just kind of sitting there. I was a convicted felon. I was on probation. I had dropped out of school. I was still drinking and smoking and doing a bunch of BS pretty much every single day. I was working a dead-end job at a factory doing putting circuit boards and all these weird electronics together, and it was just not a very good life at all, right? So there was a couple things that happened that were a turning point for me. So number one, it's kind of a random innocuous story, but it really did kind of shift the trajectory of my life. So I ended up quitting the job at the electronics factory because it was like the worst job on planet Earth. And I was broke, living in this apartment for $250 an hour. Like I had no money. So I was like, dude, I got to go get a job somewhere. So I didn't have a car at the time. So I just walked by like the nearest places I could find to go look for a job. And so I walked in, there was this video store, right? So people were like video store. This is back in like 2014. So like video stores still existed, right? So I walked into this video store called Family Video,
Mm-hmm.
and I just applied because I was just looking for like a regular job. I was like, oh, maybe get a job behind, just be a clerk or whatever, right? And so even back then, like I was still a smart kid, very articulate, right? So I knew enough that like I should dress up nice, that I should have combo with the manager, and we were chatting back and forth, and like she must have saw something in me where basically she said that she was leaving the position and that they were looking to train someone in to be a new manager of the store. So like for me, I was just going in to look for a regular job, but like this was like, oh cool, like this is maybe something I could do to, turn my situation around. And like up until that point, actually, I'd gotten fired from every single job I ever had. I got fired for stealing liquor from work. I got fired for being just generally like a rude, obnoxious, not willing to listen employee. But like this was like, okay, let me try to fix this, right? So I got the job, and then I basically started looking up just different videos on YouTube about self improvement because I was just trying to turn my life around. I was trying to do well at my job, and so I was watching these videos in order for me to just level up. So I got the new job, things are going okay. I was still kind of like doing BS. I was still smoking a lot, doing all this other stuff. I just started watching more and more of these videos, particularly by this one guy named Ty Lopez. And it just got to a point where like I just realized like I didn't want to live like that anymore. So literally, kid you not, I got done watching one of these videos. I'm sitting here in my apartment broke, and I literally like stood out loud and I was like, I'm not effing living like this, right? So I screamed it at the top of my lungs. I was just infuriated with myself. And so this guy, Ty, he had this self improvement, like mentoring program called the 67 Steps. And it was like 67 bucks or whatever. And like right after that, I was like, man, let me take this course just to like see what I can do. So after I kind of yelled in my apartment, I opened up my laptop, went and bought the course, and then it was like 67 days long because the whole theory behind it is that it takes. He read this study where it takes like 66 days to build a habit, and he added an extra day on for like some extra sauce or something like that. And then he delivered the course. I took the program and like I was like, all right, this is just something I'm gonna stick to this thing, right? So every single day I would watch the videos, I would take notes, kind of pat myself on the back for doing well, and I just kept going and going and going and going and going, and I finished that entire program. And like I kid you not, like ever since that day, like I've been motivated pretty much ever since. Later down the road we can talk about it, but like that kind of ended up spilling into the writing thing. But it was really just looking at my life. Like a lot of people have this idea of their potential, right? So when I was growing up, everyone said, yeah, everyone like they recognized how smart I was. They were like, "You're so smart. You can go and do all these things. You have all this great potential." But I looked up. I was 24 years old, 25. I was broke. I was a convicted felon. I was making $10 an hour at some BS job, and like it kind of just hit me. It's like, dude, like if you don't do something fast, something you're just gonna end up living a horrible life. So it was just kind of like instead of wishing my situation was different, I just recognized like you got yourself into this hole. Like this is where you're at, and if you don't do something drastic, like fast, things aren't going to go well. And that was really the moment that kind of sparked everything for me. And yeah, pretty much ever since I started that program, I kind of instilled those habits and really never looked back.
I know that testimony is powerful, and I appreciate you connecting all of the dots back and walking us through that journey, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people who feel they're in a place where they feel stuck, that they're not living to their potential. Maybe there's all these identities in their mind that they're kind of in a mental prison to. But you saying, if I'm understanding correctly, that one person who saw something in you, though, the family video manager, kind of lit a little fire, and then you kind of also realizing like, all right, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I need to do something about this, and then just kind of putting the pressure on yourself to stick with that course, and then the momentum that you've generated. I mean, we see where it's carried you thus far. I guess I want to go back to the part of like the labels, because you said convicted felon, smoking weed, all these different things, and for some people, they can wear those labels as almost like they're permanent, that they're tattoo, and it puts them in a state of feeling hopeless, helpless, that they can't change their situation. And there's this quote that I've heard you share from Tim Ferriss about many people choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And so I would love to hear you just talk more about like that living below our potential and almost feeling like we're stuck in that and we're in this own mental prison in that. And I guess, why do you feel like many people are living below their potential and feeling almost helpless that they can't change their identity, reinvent themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably the number one reason why we live below our potential, even though we know we could do better, is because, like, no matter how bad our life is, at least we are used to it and we know what to expect, right? So I even remember this quote from the show Sopranos. The psychiatrist lady in there said, we crave familiarity even if it's bad for us, right? So it's a weird thing where, in a sense, you can almost say that people are like addicted, or like they actually on some level like being a loser, or they like living below their potential because it can preserve that identity. And another thing people kind of cling to, which is really strange, is they like the idea of their potential, right? So they like to have that story in the back of their mind that if only I would get it all together, like everything would change. And that gives them like a weird, almost perverted sense of like hope and comfort, when the reality is, in going to face uncertainty, the thing people are afraid of most isn't failing, it's putting their all into something and then still failing, because then that just means that you're just not cut out for it. Then that just means you're not built for it, right? And that's a really hard realization to come to grips with, that like you are just not equipped for the things you desire out of life. Like that's just a very cold and lonely place to be. So most people would rather stay in the cocoon of their comfort zone because you know what to expect, right? Like you at least what's going to happen at that crappy job. Maybe it was somebody you don't really see yourself being with, but like you at least you're comfortable being, like, even people in relationships do this, right? Where they just stay with somebody because they're this like familiar, right? And they just don't want to face uncertainty, mainly because they don't want to face the fact that they might not be cut out for it. And then also, it is like, a sense of it is like in a sense like a loss if you change, because you have to let go of that person who you were. And part of it's like it's this sunk cost fallacy, right? Where the more time you spend doing something or investing into it, you kind of feel embarrassed to let go of it, because in order for you to change, you'd have to first make the admission that you essentially wasted years of your life, that you could have been doing something differently. And so most people just don't want to cut bait and start over for that reason.
I love what I'm hearing you say here of like we're almost trying to protect ourselves, self-preservation. Let me shy away from putting in the work, really having to put myself out there, and instead I could kind of shun that, live below expectations. And there's always still kind of like, well, you can always imagine or dream about your potential, but it still keeps you at an arm length distance from having to do any work. And you're really good about flipping some of these narratives that we put on ourselves, including the one of being an imposter, because many people can also use that as a way to live below their potential or to shy away from certain things. And I know in your TEDx talk, you talked about how the future belongs to us imposters. And I've also heard you mention too, like, we can use that narrative to our benefits. And so I was wondering if you could kind of share with people a little bit deeper about what you mean about how, when it comes to being imposter, how we could actually use that to our advantage when it comes to stepping in the uncertainty, because sometimes we feel like we don't have the experience or we're starting at ground zero when going into a new situation.
Yeah, so when it comes to the imposter thing, like the whole reason I said like the future belongs to the imposters is basically because if you are trying to do something like unique and novel, you're gonna have to stretch like outside of your comfort zone. And basically all the rewards now are going to places where there aren't really like pre-established conventions and norms. So it almost is a little bit like you're just going into new territory, so it makes you feel like an imposter. But like if you feel totally certain and comfortable with what you're doing, it means you're not pushing yourself, right? So like I don't feel like you don't feel like an imposter going to your like menial job or whatever, because it doesn't require like a great deal of like energy and effort to get there. And when you're dealing with people, especially like when it comes to like putting yourself in a business, going online, like one of the things I've learned over time, you think as you rise up that more people would be like extremely competent or like have it together, but the higher you go, the more you realize that everyone is just figuring it out on the fly. Like there is no such thing as this ironclad rule of thumb, like boxes that you have to check in order to feel credible. And also, credibility is in the eye of the beholder, in my opinion, because I look at, you've probably seen this in my writing. Like I look at a lot of established quote unquote institutions from the educational system to the media to all these different organizations, and I think they're completely garbage institutions that have no credibility, right? And it's just because they have like a label or a credential that people automatically ascribe competence to them. Where I don't think that's true at all. I think the real competent people are the ones who are actually putting themselves out there in the arena and trying new things, where I feel like it's actually inverted, right? The people, I trust people who are in the arena versus people who are in these institutions, like commenting from the sidelines. And I think with all these new like areas, like content creation wasn't even a job like 10 years ago, right? So by definition, there's no perfect label or like credential, or you can't get a degree for being a YouTuber or a podcaster or putting a business together. So I think it's just about leaning into things that make you feel afraid, right? There's that quote from Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art, like great book for creatives and people who feel self-doubt. It's like fear is a signal, right? The thing that you're afraid of most is the thing you're supposed to do, the thing that makes you question yourself, right? So he has a quote. It's like the really smart, intelligent people are the ones who have fear and self doubt. It's the ones that are full of confidence that are the idiots, right? That's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The people who think they know everything are the ones who actually have it wrong, and those who are like stepping out into the field and like maybe you're feeling some self doubt, but you're course correcting, you're getting better, and you're iterating along the way. Like those people tend to be a lot more trustworthy in the long run, in my opinion.
These are the gems that I'm talking about here, because of you sharing things like everyone's figuring it out as they go, and that if you feel fearful about something, if you feel a sense of self-doubt, like that's actually a good thing to stay the course, to stay in the arena. And I want to dive deeper into this point about like staying in the arena, because you talked about doing that, the Tai Lopez course, 67 days, which you had to stick with. And we know we're about 8 weeks into a new year, and many people are trying to get into the arena, but we also know what New Year's resolutions, I think about, let's see here, 36% of people make it on average of holding their New Year's resolution past January. And then that dives down to about 9% as we go February and beyond. And so I want to talk about that whole aspect of like staying the course, especially say you're not seeing the results, or if you're a creator, you're not getting the content, or you're not getting the clicks, you're not getting the clients. Like, what have you learned about the journey and the marathon and just staying the course especially when maybe you're not seeing the results at front, because I know we do live in a microwave results kind of a culture too, and wanting to see things happen overnight.
Yeah, man. The thing about it is like people give up at like a comical level. Like it's laughable how early they quit. Like I've seen people post like in Facebook groups about like, oh, I posted 3 articles on Medium and I'm not getting any traction. Like I'm ready. Like, what are you talking about? Like if you're trying to post content, like the rule for content is the rule of 100, right? So do 100 podcast episodes, right? So like Seth Godin has this saying, like, I'll come on anyone's podcast as long as they've done 100 episodes first, right? Because then he knows you're serious enough for him to take seriously. Another thing I would say is that the beginning part's always the hardest, right? Like the first 20% of the journey is where like 80% of your progress is going to come from, because being a beginner is just so difficult, right? So when it comes to content, it's like you got to figure out you got to figure out what content to make. You got to figure out how to make it good. You got to learn how to do these different platforms. You got to master all the technical skills. And I think the interesting thing that trips people up when it comes to like online business and content creation is not so much the main thing, where it's like all the little ticky tack things that get in the way, right? So it's like, all right, I gotta upload the video, then I gotta make the thumbnail, then I gotta find the keywords, and I gotta put the keywords in there, then I gotta put the links in the show notes, then I gotta take that and turn it into a clip, then I gotta study that. It's just all these little ticky tack things that get in the way, so it's really like the big things aren't the damaging ones. It's the little stuff. Like I've seen more people get kind of shredded in this content game by not even the content, but figuring out little tech stuff like, all right, I got to set up the landing page and put the email software in there and make the form, send the emails out, connect it to my YouTube. So like all those little things. But it's like you kind of just got to grit your teeth and go through it. But like once you make it like in like a year, I feel like it gets a lot easier. Like if you can just put your head down for 12 months. So first start with 30 days. Like any kind of content you're creating, like you should just be going hard 30 days straight. Like if I was a writer, I would write 30 new blog posts, or I'd write a tweet every single day for 30 days. If I was a video creator, I'd at least be working on either shooting, editing, or publishing content once every single day. And then once you break through that, like you just have to, it's kind of like a rocket, right? Like the rocket takes like so much combustion and energy to get off the ground, right? But then it kind of breaks through the atmosphere, and then it's kind of like floating in space, right? So once it takes a lot of combustion in the beginning, but then once you break through, it's just like you have momentum, right? That's why I created the momentum program, because like momentum is everything, right? So once you've been doing, a lot of people go to the gym and it's like really struggling like to go do the workouts when they first start. But if you've been going to the gym for a year, then you just pick up your shoes and go. Like you're not really thinking about it. So you want to get it. There's a saying like there's like unconscious incompetence, right? So you don't know you're stupid, right? Or it's conscious incompetence where you are aware and you're trying to get better. And then there's like unconscious competence, where the things that used to be really hard, you can now do in the background. Like, so a good example is like driving, right? So sometimes, like a lot of us have experienced when we're driving, sometimes we can drive all the way home and we're not really even paying attention to the road. Like we're just daydreaming or listening to a podcast, but your muscles you just know how to drive. Like you don't have to think about it. But think about the first time you drove a car. It was not the same way. You probably were like starting and stopping, hitting the brakes, or like didn't know how to park, right? So a lot of things are like that, where you just want to develop it to the point where you can develop that sort of unconscious competence, where it's kind of like a muscle memory thing, where it becomes a lot easier for you.
There's a couple things I want to honor here. First, going back to just the quitting too soon. I mean, right now we're only, as we mentioned, 8 weeks into the new year, and so the whole aspect of like we're not even in sports terms past the first quarter, and so giving up now it kind of should be unthinkable. And you talked about some of the things that people can give up too easily about the small things. I mean, you even challenged me in the course. I was like, yeah, the lighting needs to be right. You know, I got to do some editing and stuff like that. You're like, just make contact with the outside world, just put it out there. And so kind of helping people get over that aspect of dragging their feet or using the excuse of perfection to not put themselves out there, I think is really important that you're hitting on. And then the aspect too of the period of time, because I know in our course it was a 90-day course, but you were talking about like 30 days. Go hard for 30 days and just using that as kind of the starting point for your process and working and grinding at it. And I know you said like we could expand that to a year, which brings up, I got to bring up one of my favorite J. Cole verses that you offered to us about playing the long game, which is keep grinding, boy. Your life can change in 1 year. And there's one key word in there, grinding, that I want to kind of dive deeper in, because you talked about how you had to make sacrifice for the period of time that you were doing this. You talked about actually a 2-year period. You said you gave up certain enjoyments, TV, drinking, going out to eat. And so what do you want people to understand when it comes to the sacrifice in the process of transforming? Because discipline, having to give up things, can also be a part of the process where it's like, I want to create change, but I don't want to give up the weeds, or I don't want to give up the bad habits. But if you're trying to be honest with yourself in transformation, and even in you talk explicitly about having to do it for 2 years, how pivotal is sacrifice in being successful in that process?
Yeah, man, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too, bro. Like that's the main thing. And like I think the thing that was like different for me is that I didn't have to force myself into those sacrifices. Right? I made those sacrifices, but it was because I I wanted to do the writing more than I wanted to do the other stuff. It was like I was so compelled and drawn to doing it that other things naturally fell by the wayside. Right? Even now, like I remember I used to be like really big. I used to watch sports all the time. I would sit down and watch football from the beginning of Sunday till the end of Sunday. I would get like emotionally affected if my team lost. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with watching sports. But for me, like, I haven't watched a full NFL game aside from like, I watched the Super Bowl, stuff like that. But aside from that, I haven't really watched any football. And it wasn't like I'm some holier than thou person who like thinks it's bad. It's just the things I was working on in my business were not even more just important to me. It was more fun, right? So like I think it's like switching your reward mechanism, right? So the reason why people like to watch TV, why they like to drink, why they like to do drugs is because it provides like dopamine, right? It's that pleasure chemical. It's the same reason why people like scroll through TikToks and do all that, right? So the way to flip it on its head is to find a dopamine reward source that's healthier, right? So for me, a large part of my success was just a dopamine addiction just wired the other way, where it was like my dopamine was like, oh, I just posted this article and it got this many views. Okay, let me see if I can top it the next time. Let me see if I can top it the next time, right? So it was the same thing on Medium, from YouTube. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I love making an impact on people, but dude, I would be lying if I said I didn't love the attention. I love the notifications. I love the subscribers, the comments. Like, so it's like gamifying it that way. Like, make it like a fun game. Like, growing your channel, it's a fun game. Make it the reward source. And like, yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I'll just tell people. Sometimes when I bring like, sometimes when I tell people like to not watch as much TV, sometimes I don't even tell them to stop. I just say maybe watch less. Like, people get really upset with me, and they're like, "You don't understand, Ayo. After a long day of work, I need to wind down. I need to, take my mind off the things." Like, do you? Or do you need to double down? So like my advice is the opposite. Like I say, when you have a lot on your plate that's stressing you out, add more to your plate so that you can be in a position in the future where it doesn't have to be like that. Right. So I still work a lot, but because I built a business, because I have cash coming in the background, all these different places, I could just decide. Some days I do, like, oh, I don't feel like working today, or I could take the day off, hang out with my kid all day, go on a vacation, do whatever I want. So like I've been able to afford myself that because I made those sacrifices in the past. And it's like, dude, like, would you really rather live vicariously through the lives of like fake imaginary people, or would you rather turn your life into that movie? And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I watch TV, I watch Netflix every day. That's my wind down routine, but it's because my main source of income is my business. So I don't have to do extra time outside of that anymore. Right? When I had a job, I had to have another business on top of my job that just where are you going to find the time to build your business while going to do a job and you're watching TV and you don't wake up early to do your like when is it going to happen? If you don't wake up earlier to do time for your work, if you don't replace what you're doing in the evening, like when the hell are you going to build your business? Like there's just no time for it. You have to create time and space to do it. It's like a literal math equation. Like if you're not going to carve out time for your thing, like how is the thing going to be built? You know what I mean? And it's just like a plain equation with people, and it's like I don't know what to tell you, man. I can't invent more hours in the day. You know?
No, I think it's important. What you're stressing here is like it's either you want it or you don't, and we all could come up with a list of different excuses, whether it be not enough time, but you're saying, well, there is always time. You can make time to get up earlier. There's different things that you can cut out. Even in the course, you talked about if we could just set aside an hour, time block an hour. I mean, that's really all it is to kind of work at that one thing. And back to a point you brought up earlier about just the exponential growth aspect of it is like that will build up over time if we just stay consistent and we stay at it. But this whole point of like urgency and stressing to people, like if you don't change or if you don't do this, nothing in your life is going to change. I've heard you talk about just sometimes thinking about death. The reality of our life is finite can also be another thing that we can tap into to kind of create that sense of urgency. And so anything else you would offer, especially for people who are kind of like, all right, they're at a point where they're still feeling like they've been playing it safe. Maybe they lax on their New Year's resolution, their creation goals. How can them thinking about, listen, life is finite, be another source of just motivating them to create a sense of urgency to change and to create that transformation that they're trying to see this year?
Yeah, dude. Like I think thinking about your mortality is really important. And like I'm not old by any means. Like I'm only 34, right? So in the grand scheme of things, I'm young. But I realize like as I get older, time starts to speed up, right? So when you're young, you kind of feel like you're gonna live forever, right? So you can just put things off. But like when you get older and older, like the years go by quicker. Like I'm gonna blink and I'm gonna be 40. Next thing you know, I'm gonna be 50, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've had people reach out to me, like they'll reply to my emails and say, Ayo, like I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70. Like, oh my God, like what did I do? And they are like just filled with deep levels of regret. They're like, I feel like I wasted my life. I was with a wife or a husband I didn't want to be with for 20 years. I worked this job, and like now I'm like, damn, dude, like I don't even have that much time left. And like the reality is, so a lot of people have loved to do this, like they do this little motivational quote, like Colonel Sanders started his business at 62, blah, blah, blah. This other person started late. Well, it's like, those are exceptions to the rule. To be honest, the more people get, the older you get, the deeper your grooves and patterns become. And you literally have less energy. Even at 34, I don't have the same level of energy I had when I was 22. Right? When I was 22, I could go drink all night till 5 in the morning, and I'll be up 2 hours later, like playing basketball, right? I go drink now, I gotta be like put on a fucking IV or something because I'm like dying, right? Because it just happens. Your body can't take what it used to, so you gotta use what you have left. So like if you're young, if you're in your 20s, like A lot of people say, oh, just blow away your 20s partying. Like, don't do that. But then as you get older, it's like, it is what it is, man. You got to work with the time you have left. And it's like, don't continue to waste more time if you already wasted time, right? It's that thing where I think people just got to stick to the present moment, because the beauty of it is you can reinvent your life at any single point in time. And if you do that, once you win, then the regret of the past goes away, right? So now that I feel like I'm winning, it feels like that 25-year-old kid dropout, it feels like a lifetime ago. I don't even feel like that person anymore. And even though I may have wasted some time, I don't feel bad about it. So if you just win now, like, one saying I like is like, one major win can wipe away all of your losses. Like, if you like, there's two simultaneous things you have to juggle. Like, time is running out, and it's never too late, right? So it's like, it's never your last business. It's never your last shot at business. There's always a new fish in the sea. There's always a new opportunity. If this post fails, you can post something else. You could post 99 YouTube videos that flop, and your 100th pops off, right? So even we're talking about YouTube. Take someone like Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast was posting videos for like a decade before he got popular. He started posting videos when he was like 13, right? So everyone thinks you come out the box and be like this magical success, but it's like, sometimes it takes time, and all your failed attempts don't mean you're a failure, right? There's another good saying from Myron Golden, really good business channel on YouTube, and he says, like, the work always works, right? So even if it doesn't work for you, it's working on you. And I can't tell you how many different times where I tried things that didn't work, but they taught me, A, figuring out what doesn't work leads you closer to what does. B, it teaches you more resilience, how to be more adaptable. And then even when it comes to things like rejection, like, once you take enough rejection, then you don't really care about it anymore. It's like all those things of uncertainty you're getting afraid of, like, it doesn't really matter. And so, like, most people come to realize that at the end of their lives, like, dang, I should not have been so worried about what other people think. Like, now I'm going to die, and now I realize this doesn't matter. Well, it's like, now just understand you're going to die one day. And when you're on your deathbed, you're going to kick yourself thinking that you were worried what people are going to say because you shot a YouTube video. Like, you're not going to care. So just stop caring now.
Yeah, I want to reiterate some of the things you talked about there in terms of just, you're only one win away. So it is never too late. And that's good for people to know, like, when it comes to their past, like, that the fact that one win can kind of wash it all away. And we all know there's a book, I think, by like a nurse who worked with terminally ill patients. And I think that was like the number one regret, was living to the expectations of others. And so if folks out there listening, fast forward to your deathbed, and if you look back on your life now, like, have you been living to the expectations of others, and how much is that going to matter, when you're at the end of your life? And so, kind of taking all that and all these gems and some of these misconceptions that you've already started to dispel around, there is no such thing as overnight success, and how you got to put in the work. I know you got a video about, like, yeah, there's no, like, kind of secret sauce to it. Like, you really do have to roll up your sleeves and get at it. Are there any other misconceptions or mistakes that you see a lot of creators making out there that you wanted to just share with them some, like, insight about?
Absolutely. There's one I've been particularly interested in lately, and it's waiting too long to monetize, to build products and services around what you're doing, right? So a lot of creators get it in their head that they have to, like, build and build and build and build forever before they're allowed to sell. When in reality, I believe you should start selling a lot faster, right? So the way you build a good creator business is to build some sort of products and services around what you're doing. And if you don't do that early enough, what can happen is you can build an audience, but you won't build a business. And a lot of creators, they focus on content creation, which is good, but if you don't have anything to sell, then you're just kind of like pumping traffic to nowhere. So I would tell people, like, if you have a body of knowledge that's helpful to people and solves problems, maybe you move into the coaching space, maybe you create programs, or maybe you take that skill and package it up as a service. Like, you can edit YouTube videos for other people. You can do copywriting, content writing, right? You can do things on these platforms for other people. I would say like 30 to 90 days of like learning a skill. Like, if you studied, let's say, like copywriting every day for 30 days, you'd be good enough to get clients, right? Or like, say you want to be a coach, like, okay, go get some coaching certification or something like that. But then after that, go get customers and clients. So I think the biggest mistake in the next frontier a lot of creators need to get a hold of is getting a handle on marketing and sales. And a reason why a lot of creators shy away from marketing and sales is because you have to go through a lot of rejection in marketing and sales, right? So I have multiple products. I reach out to people to buy my products and services. The vast majority of people say no, but the people who say yes are more than enough for me to make a good living. So I think a lot of creators, out of fear, they kind of have this vision in their mind that they're just going to create, create, and create, and then money is just going to fall from the sky, right? And when it comes to creating content, like, unless you build products and services, the only way for you to make money creating content is to like get a crazy high amount of traffic, right? So if you build a really big YouTube channel, then you can get a lot of ad revenue and make money, right? So like Mr. Beast makes a bunch of money off of YouTube, but he gets like 200 million views a video. Joe Rogan, right? He has a very successful podcast where, since he gets so much traffic, Spotify is going to give him $100 million deal, right? But rather than banking your future on getting, like, you should aim for the moon. Like, I want everyone on YouTube to get their gold and silver plaques, but rather than relying on that as a strategy, creators should build some sort of product ecosystem and begin plugging it fast. They should create an email list where their audience can opt into, or they can have conversations that lead to sales. They should be on these different platforms, talking to their audience, trying to close deals, and monetizing way sooner. So that was probably one of the, I wouldn't use the word mistake, but so like I started my come up on Medium, where I was getting paid directly to write articles for the website, which is great. Like, at the height of it, I was making like 20 grand a month, which is awesome. But there was no like back end plan to that. And, fortunately, I was doing things like keeping an email list. So I did end up doing things like writing books and selling them, like creating courses. But had I not done that and only relied on the platform, the direct revenue from the platforms, it would have been in struggle for. So there's a lot, like, most content creators are not making very much money. Another thing I learned recently, like, I've been very active on Twitter. I've gotten to know a lot of like the big accounts over there. I'm kind of making a splash over there. I know people over there. And the dirty little secret is that a lot of these accounts aren't making very much money at all. They're creating content that's entertaining, but it's not providing value or solving a specific problem really. So it's harder for them to monetize. So I would pick something that you're going to create around that sort of has like a niche audience you could focus on. It's like, if I'm doing a YouTube channel, it's because I'm trying to land clients. If I have a podcast, it's because I'm trying to land clients. If I'm creating content now on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, now it's all generated. And like with the email list, you want to build, they call it a funnel, right? So someone watches a free piece of content, maybe they sign up to your email list, maybe you give them another couple of emails, free value. And then after that, you say, hey, here's my product, right? And then you try to sell stuff. So without that, a lot of creators end up kind of struggling and not making the money that they should, especially because there's a lot of good creators out there that get good traffic, but because they lack business and marketing and sales skills, then the revenue doesn't match like the quality of their content, which is a shame.
I love this free game that you're sharing, even some of the behind the scenes, real scoop of it all. So some of the pillars that you offer to people about building up your email list, thinking a little bit more creatively about writing, maybe writing for someone else in providing some support or services that way could be another angle in. And then there's something that I want to make sure people understand and hear is you talk about like a lot of folks are focusing on content, but it's really important if you're trying to make money to think about the service that you're going to monetize and being able to put that out there and offer. But I could hear listeners saying, but wait, but I got to get 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers before I offer anything. Is that true? Do you need to have a big audience to sell your first product or to start making some money?
Absolutely not. I'm gonna mastermind with this guy. He writes about like gut health and like fixing your gut health, immune system, holistic health strategies. Dude's pulling in $2,500 deals. He has like 24 followers on Twitter, bro. Right? And
That's crazy. Wow.
The new thing I've picked up recently is that when you have a small following, what you need to do is you need to go out and talk to people, right? So this is where like DM outreach. So there's basically two different forms of outreach. There's cold outreach and there's warm outreach, right? So cold outreach is where you're reaching out to people who don't know you. So for example, this guy reached out to me today. He only had like 25 followers, but he was this short form like content editor, right? So what he did, he said, "Hey, Ayo, I realized you're creating this content for writers, but you could also expand your audience if you started targeting other people and like warming them up to the idea of writing who aren't fully aware of it yet." And he was like, "These are," he made like a Google Doc for me and says, "All right, here are like 12 different ideas for like different angles I'd use for you." And then he said, "Okay, I'll take this and I'll turn these into like short form videos for you to plug." And so he didn't have a lot of followers, but I could tell from the work that he did with his pitch that he has a chance to provide a good service. Like, I'm going to take the call with him, right? I go to his profile. It says like his name. It says Reels editor, like strategy. You go to his page, like there's an optimized bio. He has a good picture. He looks professional. There's good content on there. But then like when you're reaching out to people, you want to be buttoned up, right? I actually shot a video about this. There's this other guy named Eamon. So he does short form YouTube, like YouTube Shorts, Reels. He built his business to 80 grand a month in a year. And what he did, he would go. So instead of like begging for clients, what he would do, he would go find people. He would take their long form content. He would chop it up, put cool edits on it, and just give it to them and say, "Hey, post this on your page. If it performs well and you like it, well then let's talk about me making more." So that's how he got his foot in the door, right? So what a lot of small creators don't understand, or they don't have the willingness to do, they're not scrappy enough. They're not putting their foot in the door. Like, I get pitched constantly, and most of the pitches are horrendous, where it's like, go take the time, 10 minutes, whip up a little Google Doc saying, "All right, here's how my video edits can help your business," right? You can take a Loom video, like go review their website, say, "Here are some things I could fix." Another thing I've had, like some students of my buddy Francis, who has like an email copywriting program, what they've done, they've like taken promotions for products I was going to launch, and they wrote their own emails like of how they would launch it, and they were pretty good, right? So like, had I been in the mood for that, I may have hired those people. So when you're scrappy, it's like you have to go out and like prove and demonstrate that you know what you're doing. And some of that involves doing things that don't scale, like giving out free samples of your work, like going out and doing these personalized pitches. And then you can also do like warm outreach. So even if you only have 24 followers, go and reach out to all 24 of them individually and then start having conversations. Oh, it's like the gut health guy. He has 24 followers, but someone follows him and says, "Hey, thanks for the follow. Like, I'm curious what made you follow me." It's like, "Oh, well, actually, I've been experiencing like problems with my health. Like, I've been getting sick a lot." "Oh, okay. Tell me more about that." Boom, boom, boom. Leads to a conversation. He has something that is a benefit to people and can solve their problems. So it doesn't matter how many followers you have. All that matters is, can you prove that you have a product or service that can fit the needs of the market? And if you go out of your way to do that early on, like, you can make money a lot quicker. like one of the things I changed my mind on is that, it took me like 4 years to quit my job. And I kind of had this thing like you had to grind it out for years, where I've seen a lot of people on social media, online, they're building 6-figure businesses in 12 months. But it's that what shrinks your time frame is the execution, right? So if you execute on stuff quickly, you can quit your job in a year. But it's like, how quick are you going to execute? So for like most people, like if you have a business, especially a service business, you should be sending 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 DMs a day, right? I got that book behind me in the right there, Alex Hormozy, $100 million leads. That's what he says. If you're brand new, if you're trying to get clients, you need to be sending 100 DMs, not a month, not a year, a day, right? My buddy Francis, I think he sent like 300 pitches before he got his first client. But you put those reps in, there's people out there, man. There's 7 billion people on planet Earth. And if you have a nice service, you price it properly, you only got to get a handful of them to say yes in order for you to reach your income goals. But most people, again, it's like the rejection thing. Like, so I go and do DMs for prospects all the time. So I wrote this tweet the other day and it was like, here's what my DMs look like. No, 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 $1,000 client close. No, 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 $2,500 client close. No, 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 no. Here's what I think at the end of the day. I made $3,500. Right? It's like, that's like the attitude you have to have behind it. Like, most people are going to say no, but if you learn how to package a service quickly, learn a skill, and actually do outreach, like you don't need very many followers at all. I actually think there's no correlation between the amount of followers you have and the amount of money you can make. I actually know a lot of people who don't have a lot of followers who make a lot of money. There's a guy, one of my mentors, he was talking about, there's a guy who has like 2,000 followers on social media and his company is doing $100 million in revenue. So it's like content creation skills and business skills are two different things. And people automatically assume followers equals content. But like my coach, like his name is J.K. Molina, he made this saying, he's like, likes ain't cash, right? So he started to realize that he was making all this viral content, but it wasn't really making any money. So then he backtracked to like, okay, I have to figure out how to monetize this. So like content creation is one skill, monetization is an entirely different skill. And honestly, I'd say like get better at the monetization skill first. So like knowing what I know now, I could quit my job in a year. But it took me time to learn those lessons. But now like my thing is, since I went and made the mistakes and wasted too much time, I wouldn't say wasted, but it just took longer than it needed to. Now I'm just telling people like, no, like go package your stuff into a coaching offer sooner. Go do outreach sooner. Go create a profitable skill and become a freelancer and start your agency sooner, right? So it only takes you like, I'd say like 30 of 90 days to build competence, and then you're good to go. Just go out there and start hunting and landing clients.
The free game that you were just dropping, Ayo, but this is just kind of who you are. Like you said, you've walked the path, you've got lessons learned, and you're passing them along to the audience, and I'm grateful for that. And just letting people know how simple it can be, but you got to put in the work, you got to put in the reps, and you got to keep going and playing the long game. But if you do that over time, you will see the results, but you just got to stay the path and keep persevering. So as we get ready for our each one teach one, I just got a couple rapid fire questions for you, Ayo. So the first one I wanted to get into is, you kind of already gave us one book recommendation, but what's a book or a podcast that you recommend that has been a game changer for you in your journey?
I think a good book people should read, it's called, there's two books. One is called the Adweek Copywriting Handbook, and the other one is called the Ultimate Sales Letter. I recommend those books because if you want to make money, you need to learn how to write copy, right? It's like any business owner, learning how to write copy is going to change the game for you. So what is copywriting? Copywriting is basically any set of words that gets people to do something, right? So from a sales page to sell a product, to emails, to promote your programs, to even the title and description of your YouTube video can dramatically affect your views. So I think a number one money-making skill people should learn is copywriting. So those two books, the Adweek Copywriting book I'll give you 3 books: the Adweek Copywriting Handbook, the Ultimate Sales Letter, and Cash Advertising. Read each of those books 3 times, and you will possess more power to make money than 99% of people on planet Earth.
Folks, you need to take that to heart right there. And I've heard this saying too, like if you have great writing skills, you'll never be out of a job. So I can only imagine if you leverage that for your own self, what you can build.
Cheat code.
So I know people are like, okay, I know what kind of books you absorb, but they want to know more about your habits. So the next question for you is, what's one habit or practice that you do that has been impactful for you in your lifestyle design?
Walking 10,000 steps on a daily basis. Walking is like the cheat code to life for a couple reasons. One, it's a lot easier to manage your weight if you walk 10,000 steps a day. It's just like a low effort way to burn fat. Two, going on walks like without your phone, especially like if you can walk outdoors like in nature, it's like a walking meditation, and you get really good ideas. Like all the best kind of writers and creatives have been known for like going on long walks, because it's like when you're doing, it's kind of like sometimes if you're too focused on what you're trying to do, like the ideas just aren't coming. But when you kind of just go and like do something where your mind, just let your mind wander a little bit, like really good ideas come to you. So I would definitely say getting those steps in every single day, both for your physical and mental health, total game changer.
Yeah, I appreciate that one. And I forget the author's name of The Ego and the Enemy, but he talks about how even like problem solving, just the solution can come to you on a walk. So echo that as a habit for people to lean into more. So the next one, we're going to put on our policymaker hat. Like, if you had the ability, what's one law or policy that you would create, Ayo, that everyone would need to abide by?
I just have a very specific one. It's not for everyone, but I would I would privatize the education system. So here's what I mean by that. So the reason why the public school system is so bad is because there's no incentives for the public schools to improve, right? So what I would say is I would give every family money from the government for them to go pick whatever school they wanted to, right? So they have some things like this. It's like the voucher program, right? So the reason why that will work better is because when people vote with their dollars, it creates competitive forces, right? So businesses, imagine that there was a grocery store in town and their food was terrible. They had no good products, but you still had to go there anyways, just because it was the grocery store in your local neighborhood. That would be a terrible business. But why are stores good? Because they know that if your store sucks, you can go somewhere else. So I think it's the same way with the school system, because you just have to go to the school that's in your zip code. There's no competitive forces to make those schools improve. So I think privatizing the education system and putting like not making people pay for school, but giving them money to vote with their dollars would create the sort of like economic effect that would make these schools improve, because like they've shown over and over, people say they need to pour more money into the system. Baltimore is one of the worst cities in America when it comes to crime and education system, and they have like the top 3 highest education budget in the country. So just pouring money into bad schools isn't going to fix it. If you create the ability for people to vote and to leave if the school is bad, it'll create competitive forces. I think when it comes to, a lot of people talk about institutional racism. I think the school system is probably the biggest example of institutional racism, because these schools are terrible, and a lot of people, even people who claim that they care about the education system, are some of the worst perpetrators of this, because they believe in this bureaucratic sort of like, it's just bloated, inefficient systems where like none of these people are held accountable. So yeah, that's something I really care about. I would immediately privatize the education system. I would, whatever the name for the federal education board, I would abolish it. I would get rid of it. I don't think that we need people who are so divorced from reality and who are not close to the ground near these schools. They shouldn't be making any wholesale policy decisions for the whole country. So that would be probably the number one thing I would do.
Oh, I love that answer. That right there is deep. So the final question that I got for you, brother, is this. This season is all about taking ownership of your life, personal responsibility. So what's one final lesson that you had to learn about taking ownership of your life that was important for you to learn in order for you to become who you are today?
I just think it's like I think that's probably like the beauty of business is that like you can't look at anyone else for yourself for the results. That's what I love about it, right? That's why the upside is so high, and that's why there's a downside. Like the downside is you go broke or go in debt, or the upside is you can make millions of dollars. So I think entrepreneurship is a great vehicle for self-improvement, and if you're thinking about starting a business, like you should. But otherwise, I would just say that, like, man, it's in your best interest to act as if everything is your fault, even if it's not. Because, like, some people, like, life doesn't deal fair hands, right? So, like, I just got lucky to be born in America, to be born to, like, a decent family. But it's like, wherever your situation is, like, even if it's unfair, it is what it is, dude. Like, and if you're waiting for someone else to come fix it, like, I think society and the government and all these institutions have proven that they are ill-equipped to do that for you, right? So you're going to have to do it for yourself. And it may not be fair, but, like, if you want your life to change, you just have to operate with whatever you have, like what's in front of you. Like, you can't change your present reality. So I think it's like a lot of people, you have to get rid of, like, wishing things were different, wishing your circumstances were different. Like, if you grew up in a bad neighborhood, if you had bad parents, like, all that stuff sucks. We should work as a society to make those things better, but you got to start with whatever you're at. Like, that's really your only viable option, is to just take as much responsibility as humanly possible.
I love that theme of just radical responsibility, just taking ownership of it all, the cards you were dealt, and how powerful that type of mindset and empowering that type of mindset can be. And your story and everything that you shared is just a living testament to you can really kind of rewrite your own narrative, reinvent yourself, and reimagine your life completely across the board. So, Ayo, the final question I got for you is just pretty much like, what's next for you, and where can people go to learn more and find out more about you?
Yeah, so, like, I'm spending a lot of time creating content on Twitter. So you can follow me at, like, Ayo the Author, AYO the Author, on Twitter. Well, like, these days I'm spending a lot of time like helping writers, content creators, business owners start either their own coaching programs or service-based businesses, helping them land clients. Just launched a new project helping people with that. So if you want to get on my email list, you could go to prowriter.com. So, like, it's pro-writer.com. There's a big email form on the sign up at the website. Go fill your email in there. I'll send you some goodies, and then, you'll learn a little bit more about my programs and everything like that. But yeah, my handle everywhere is Ayo the Author on Twitter. Same thing on IG, TikTok. So I'm pretty much everywhere these days. So yeah, just come find me if you want to go make some money, build a business. I got you.
Cool, well said. And I'll put all of those handles in the show notes. And again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything, from the time, for all the gems that you dropped today, but then everything that I've gotten to learn from you as a part of your courses, all the content that you share. I mean, folks, I told you at the beginning, put your feelings on the side, because everything that Ayo shares is he's lived it, but it's really about putting in the work. It's about investing in yourself and understanding that you and only you can create the transformation that you want to see. And I know today's interview was powerful demonstration in that. And so if you're looking to level up, just tap in and tune into everything that Ayo's plugged into. And yeah, your life will be transformed. So thank you again for your time, Ayo.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Cool. Well, folks, that is it for today's show. I'd like to thank you again for your presence and tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, leaving us a review on iTunes, Spotify, and as well as YouTube. Reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.